All right, let's just jump right in. The new AI search tools, they feel like straight-up magic, don't they? You ask some super complicated question, and bam! Instead of just a list of links, you get this perfectly written answer. And it even has sources. It feels like the future is here, right? Think about your own experience. You've probably used one by now. You type in something, maybe, I don't know, about the latest discoveries from the James Webb Telescope, and boom, in seconds, you have this neat little paragraph that seems to have all the answers.
It is so convenient, and it sounds so authoritative. But here's the million-dollar question we've got to ask. Just because an answer sounds all fluent and confident, does that actually make it true? Well, that's the big tension we're going to unpack today, and it's all based on some really fascinating research out of Stanford.
To really get to the bottom of that, we need to talk about one core idea. For any answer an AI gives us to be genuinely trustworthy, we, the users, have to be able to check its homework. We've got to be able to verify what it's telling us.
So the researchers behind this study borrowed this key concept, verifiability, from a place that basically lives and dies by it, Wikipedia. It's a simple idea, but it's powerful. If you make a claim, you have to back it up with a source so anyone can go and check for themselves.
Okay, so how do you actually measure this? Well, the researchers broke it down into two key things. The best way to think about it is like you're grading a student's research paper. First, there's what they call citation recall. Basically, did the student remember to put a little citation next to every single fact they wrote down? And then, second, there's citation precision. This is the big one. If you go and actually look up those sources, do they really say what the student claims they do? For that paper to be trustworthy, you need a big yes to both.
And that is exactly what this team at Stanford did. They ran this huge audit, putting some of the most popular AI search engines out there under a microscope to see how they really stack up when it comes to this crucial issue of verifiability.
So, the study zeroed in on 4 of the big players that you might even be using right now: Bing Chat, Neva AI, Perplexity.ai, and UChat. And these aren't just some niche research projects. No, these are commercial tools that are shaping how millions of us find information every single day.
And they did not mess around. The researchers absolutely hammered these AIs with over 1,000 real-world questions each. And we're not talking simple trivia here. These questions were pulled from real Google searches, from the Explain Like I'm 5 community on Reddit, and even from these super open-ended essay prompts from Oxford entrance exams. They wanted to see how these things performed out in the real, messy world. So after all that stress testing, what was the verdict? How'd the AIs do? Well, this is where it starts to get a little bit worrying. The final report card that came back had some, let's say, surprisingly low grades in the areas that matter most for trust.
Let's start with that first metric, citation recall. On average, across all 4 of these systems, only 51.5% of sentences were actually backed up by a source. Just let that sink in. That means for nearly half of all the statements these AIs are making, they give you 0 verifiable evidence.
Okay, but what about when they do give you a source? That's citation precision. Well, the number here is better, but it's still pretty concerning. Only 74.5% of the citations actually supported the sentence they were attached to. That means more than 1 out of every 4 times an AI shows you its proof, that proof is misleading, irrelevant, or just flat out wrong.
So let's just pause and put that together. We have these tools that sound incredibly smart and helpful, but almost half of what they say isn't properly sourced, and a quarter of the sources they do bother to give you are inaccurate. The paper itself calls these results concerningly low, especially given what they call the AI's facade of trustworthiness.
But this is where the research found something genuinely weird. A paradox that's right at the very heart of how these things work. It's not just that they're wrong sometimes, it's when they're wrong that is so counterintuitive.
The paper says it perfectly, so I'm going to quote it directly. The responses that seem more helpful are often those with inaccurate citations. Just think about that for a second. The answers that feel the best, the most complete, the most useful, those are the ones most likely to be misleading you.
It feels completely backwards, doesn't it? Why in the world would an answer that feels more helpful actually be less reliable? Well, the reason comes down to 2 totally different strategies that these AIs are using to come up with an answer in the first place. So on one hand, you've got the safe but stiff approach. Some AIs, they just play it safe. They basically copy and paste sentences directly from their sources. Now, this is great for citation accuracy. Of course, the source supports the text, but it can sound kind of disjointed and robotic.
Then, on the other hand, you have the helpful but hollow strategy. This is where the AI takes all the information and freely summarizes and rephrases it into this beautiful, flowing story. It feels way more helpful, but in doing all that rewriting, the AI is way more likely to drift away from the source material and just make stuff up.
And this chart shows that trade-off perfectly. For instance, the researchers found that Bing Chat had the highest citation precision. It was really accurate, but users rated it as the least helpful. It was playing it safe, right? But then you look at UChat, which is rated as the most helpful-sounding AI of the bunch, but it had the absolute lowest scores for both citation precision and recall. It was choosing to tell a good story over telling a verifiable one.
So, what in the world does this all mean for us, the people who are actually using these tools every day? Well, it definitely doesn't mean we should just throw them away. It just means we need to get a whole lot smarter about how we use them.
Here are the big takeaways. First, do not be fooled by confidence. An AI's tone means absolutely nothing about its accuracy. Second, be extra suspicious of the answers that seem a little too perfect. Remember that crazy paradox? The most helpful-sounding answers can be the least reliable ones. Third, and this is probably the most important one, an AI answer is not a final answer. It is a starting point for your own research. And finally, it all comes back to that key idea, verifiability. If you can't click the link and see the evidence with your own two eyes, you've got to treat that claim with a big, healthy dose of skepticism.
So keeping all of that in mind, I just want to leave you with one final thought. The next time you type a question into one of these AI search engines and it spits back this beautiful, seamless, and seemingly perfect answer,
Are you just going to take its word for it, or are you going to do the one thing that truly matters? Will you check the sources?